Okay, we are here. We are live. WNBA is going crazy, Maria.
Crazy.
WNBA free agency is awesome. For the first time, also streaming this on LinkedIn. So, to all the recruiters out there, stop being lazy and stop just using AI to parse through people's resumes. If you go, you'll see that a lot of people actually have accomplished maybe some things in the workspace. And I'm not speaking on behalf of myself or anybody in particular. I'm just speaking on behalf of the entire workforce who is out there struggling. So, everyone go out and do the best you can. Okay. I'm
Now
gonna
that
curse
that's
on
out of the way.
I'm gonna curse on LinkedIn. I'm letting you know right now. Just not yet because I want to get super chats. And YouTube will discourage you from getting super chats if you curse within the first few minutes of your program.
Got
Maria Marino's here, ESPN contributor. We were doing buckets together also last year, Action Network, and she is play-by-play on women's basketball, college women's basketball, called the Princeton game winner recently. Was that on ESPN Plus?
Yeah, well, I was the analyst on that one, so I
Oh,
can't take
play-by-play
I
and
can't
analyst. Hold up, that's
yeah,
important.
I do
That's
I do a
important.
little bit of both. Sometimes I'm on the play-by-play, sometimes I'm on the color, but yeah, there was a Princeton game winner, Ashley Chia against Harvard, who's actually also a very good team.
Uh,
But I tried my best, Brian, to not step on the toes of the announcer. Like, don't you hate it when you're watching a game and there's like this epic play? You see this a lot with smaller market team
yes,
announcers.
yeah,
Sorry,
I know
people. But
exactly what
like
you're
where
talking.
they'll be like this game-winning shot, and then like the color person just steps all over
Yes,
the like lead person. So like I literally was like, ah! Like and I like tried to like
yes.
silence myself to like not step on his call. But yeah, it worked out.
WNBA
Little
free
side
agency, WNBA free. And look, I've done some college games before. They wouldn't let me announce the women's college basketball games at St. Francis because I was there SID when I was there. So they were like, "Hey, conflict of interest. You could do the men's games," and the men's won 4 games in 2016-17.
note.
But shout out to the women's basketball team in St. Francis at the time because they're the reason that I got like not the reason, but like I kind of after traveling with them, I had this idea like, I should get Liberty season credentials if I can get it, and covered them in 2017, and basically been doing WNBA stuff
Look
um,
at that.
ever since.
Good
Which will turn
thing.
up. We'll do more of that on the channel this coming summer. Last summer,
Cool.
this became an Olympic channel.
Yeah. Exactly.
We may do some of that as well because there are some international competitions. Okay, WNBA free agency has been crazy.
Yes.
For people who are watching, thank you very much because you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here, and I appreciate that so much because the channel is growing. We're gonna hit a bunch of stuff today. WNBA free agency, the offseason in general, because there's also been trades, championship contenders, and Caitlin Clark may or may not factor into that. And I mentioned her specifically because, well, one, she's probably the most popular American basketball player on the planet right now. I hate that it does that thumbs up thing. I don't know why that happens. For audio listeners, just got a thumbs up randomly in front of my face. But Caitlin Clark will come up, as will the Liberty, as will the Aces, as will obviously the Fever. Because I mean, the Fever actually look like they I'm not gonna say they absolutely like will get to the finals or anything crazy like that yet, but I don't know. I got some takes.
Yeah.
All right, free agency, off season. I don't want to keep saying free agency because there was also trades, but
Yeah.
what what is the move that hit you the hardest when you saw it come through on the notifications? You were like, "Oh my god, this is happening."
Okay, so Sunday morning was wild because first I woke up and saw Luka Doncic was traded to the
Oh
Lakers.
yeah,
And then moments later, I actually saw that DeWanna Bonner signed with Indiana. And maybe in the grand scheme of things, those two moves are not equivalent as far as like, overall impact, but I was very shocked by that move. Now that I've had a chance to digest it, I think it's going to be a good move for the Fever, but my initial reaction, Brian, was okay, like DeWanna Bonner and Caitlin Clark playing together after the playoffs got pretty chippy between them. Like I
hmm
remember our at the time when I was with Action Network still and we had the Buckets WNBA crew going crazy during that game because like that was a really spicy heated game. I don't remember if it was game 1, game 2. I don't remember which one, but there was definitely like, I don't know, there was a no call on Caitlin. Caitlin starts complaining to the refs. DB starts like following her and like chirping in her ear. And like it was just like, I don't know, very spicy, very heated. So I'm like, okay, these two are playing together. Interesting. I think that Steph White being the head coach of the Fever makes this like makes the move happen. Like I don't know that if that happens if Steph White isn't there, number one. That connection just like helps. I think she's going to know exactly how to use these two players together.
Sure.
And also they're pros. Like DeWanna Bonner's a pro who's been extremely successful and is one of the like all-time leaders in a number of categories, has a lot of playoff experience. Like she knows that on this new team, like she's gonna be a pro and like work it out. And I think the same for Caitlin. Like I think, and I'm not saying that like they don't like each other or Caitlin, like I'm just saying like it was just an interesting, I was like, okay. I actually pulled up my old text thread with our friend Jim Turvey, who's a WNBA
Yes.
expert as well, betting expert.
Yes.
Like we had texted about it at the time. So I like found the clip of the two of them chirping at each other. And I like replied in the text thread, like these two on the same team. Okay. But yeah, once I got over that initial like shock, I was like, look, these players want to win. And I have no doubt that they're gonna get along fine and do whatever they need to for that.
Questions, comments, always welcome, as are super chats as well. Rob comments, most interested to hear you and Maria's thoughts on Fever and their moves so far. We just did a little bit of that. I'm new to the league, started watching last season because of CC, Caitlin Clark. So I'm still new and learning things. We are doing that, Rob, and we will get to others as well.
Yeah, because there's a lot to talk. There's other moves for the Fever too that are
yeah. We may even need to move faster to get through all of it. I'm not even kidding. Like it got to the point where pre Luka Doncic, I was like, man, they're taking over the WNBA in my headspace right now. And then Luka Doncic happened, and I just plummeted. I was like, you got to be kidding! It broke right before I was doing our post-fight show for the Dave Benavidez fight on the boxing channel. And I was like, oh my God, like really? This is gonna happen before this? The DeWanna Bonner signing was interesting. I wanted the Fever to you talked about issues in the playoffs or whatever the case may be. I wanted the Fever to trade for DeJounte Carrington.
Oh my gosh.
Not even because of some spicy shit, but it's more so like Caitlin Clark and DeJounte Carrington would actually play really well together and actually are so complementary to one another. I feel like it would have made a lot of sense, but neither here nor there. Natasha Howard also goes to the Fever.
Well, yes. So hold on. Before we get to we're going to be bouncing around so much. Do you want me to respond to the Natasha Howard part first, or do you want me to get into DeJounte?
Natasha Howard, because we'll stick with the Fever.
Okay, we'll stick with the Fever first.
It's not just Natasha Howard to me. It's also Sophie Cunningham, which I think is a great fit.
Yeah. So, okay. Natasha Howard, like, look, obviously, the Fever don't protect Temi Fagbenle in the expansion draft. And I think that was one of the big surprises because I think her length and speed and athleticism and ability to run the floor was a really good thing for the Fever. And when that started happening, I mean, there was a bit of a lull in mid-season because she had been injured for a bit. But then it was like, okay, who's going to be that? And I think Natasha Howard fits that bill just in terms of always been a good rim runner, like extremely athletic. I do wonder about her age a little bit. I think that she's not quite as explosive as she used to be, but I don't think that's going to necessarily hinder her or the Fever just because of the rest of the youth with Caitlin, with Aaliyah Boston, assuming, everything, Lexi Hall stays in a pretty big role. I like it, but I think in general, you'll see a theme with all of these teams where I have concerns a little bit about continuity and just chemistry and like the fit and all that, because I do think it usually takes a good like half season for teams to get used to these new fits. And we saw that with Phoenix last year. We saw that with Seattle last year. but I still think the Fever are going to be fine. But then as far as Sophie goes, like, she's a gunner. She's been she was a real fiery 3-point threat for Phoenix. As far as like personality fit, I mean, she's been pretty vocal about like her support and admiration for Caitlin Clark. So I think that's really interesting. You give up some size. But, speaking of Lexi Hull, like, she's like the perfect example of a smaller player who still can defend her ass off. So I don't necessarily think that hurts the Fever. But speaking of like vibes, like the reason Sophie Cunningham was able to come over was because of the trade of NaLyssa Smith. So, NaLyssa Smith goes to Dallas with the aforementioned Dejanay Carrington.
Her
They're also
girlfriend.
very close.
Yeah.
But like, I just think, in terms of vibes and personalities meshing, that was probably the right call. And I'm not saying like I think as far as I know, like NaLyssa Smith and Caitlin Clark got along just fine, but for whatever reason, I don't know, NaLyssa Smith's production wasn't always consistent last year, and so that's why you saw that the Fever had to also throw in. They flipped the number 8 pick in addition to Smith. So like that shows that maybe Smith's value wasn't as high as it necessarily could have been because of a little bit of that production dip. But yeah, I think I think the fit on the court and the personalities aligning sort of makes all of this stuff. It comes into play with all of it.
I think she makes more sense on a rebuilding team anyway in Dallas, to sort of get her production and her stock back up. NaLyssa Smith, that is. I mean, also keeping Kelsey Mitchell is not insignificant for the
Not
future.
at all. But I also kind of assumed that would happen.
I didn't. Not that I did. Not that I didn't think it would, but I was like, this. She was going to get interest if she hit the open market, like truly hit the open market.
Yeah.
And anytime you're in that scenario, it's like, all right, she's never been in Indy before. I mean, she's never been out of Indy before from a WNBA sense, and has seen how tumultuous like it could be to just play at the bottom. So you get to last year, you're Kelsey Mitchell, and it's like, oh, finally, like there's some light here. It's not even just Caitlin Clark, it's also Aaliyah Boston, and just like the organization seemingly getting it together. But I mean, you kind of fell into Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark, so like that will do that. And obviously, I mean, she has to enjoy playing with Caitlin Clark because she wouldn't have signed back with the team, and that makes it the backcourt dynamic. That you have Sophie Cunningham, who's a career 37% 3-point shooter. You want shooters around Caitlin Clark, around Kelsey Mitchell. And I mean, Aaliyah Boston, DeWanna Bonner, Natasha Howard. We'll talk more about like the contender aspect later, because we got to hit more free agents, but that's a damn good offseason from Indiana. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have complaints. Like I said, I have questions, not just about the Fever, but a lot of these teams just in terms of their chemistry and fit. But I think that's fair just because there's just so much player movement and just so many new faces. And I also do think that these veteran players, there has to be a little bit of acknowledgement of whose team is this. And I don't mean to say that disrespectfully. I just think that Caitlin Clark, it's like you're going there understanding that Caitlin Clark is central to everything that's happening. And mostly from a facilitation standpoint, which is, again, a compliment to the other players because, she needs players that can score off of her, off of her passing. And then conversely for them to open up the shooting for Caitlin. So it goes both ways. But I do think there's a recognition of like, hey, like, and Aaliyah Boston too, but this is our franchise player. Really, with like there's got to be an understanding there. I think from a role standpoint.
I think there is. Janelle Walden, do you see Kelsey Mitchell's role changing under Stephanie White, or will she still be a gunner? I wouldn't call her a gunner, but I get what you're saying. I think she slots right back into the 2 guard spot.
Yeah, and then DB probably like a 3,
Yeah,
Howard at the 4,
that
Aaliyah Boston at the 5,
exactly.
ish, but like
Sophie Cunningham, 6 woman.
perhaps. And remember too, like we'll see about like because Lexi Hull kind of ended up slotting into the
That's
starting
true,
lineup.
actually.
But we're just gonna have to see how the rotation actually comes together. But in terms of, but to me, Kelsey is still your starting 2 guard regardless. And also like I think that the Fever still want to play fast, and that
Caitlin wants to play fast.
yeah,
So
and that
they're gonna
sort
do
of
that.
feeds into Kelsey being able. Kelsey is quick as hell. Like she is. Very few people can beat her down the floor. So I think don't forget, like a big part of the turning point last year for the Fever was when Caitlin and her teammates, and especially Kelsey Mitchell, got used to each other enough where Kelsey would bolt down the floor, Caitlin would be able to throw the really long, cross court passes and transitions. So I still think you're going to want to see a lot of that because I think that pace, and Sue Bird has talked about this, like that pace puts the Fever at such an advantage. It's so hard to keep up when they're doing that. And so I think everybody's going to want to be on that same page. And I think Kelsey Mitchell is like prime suspect, like number 1 for just sprinting up the floor and even not even necessarily to get layups on the other end, but even to pull up threes. Like that was when she would really get, start doing her damage as well. So I don't see her role changing too much. Even though I do think you add, I think another scoring punch in DeWanna Bonner, but I think it's nice that Bonner doesn't necessarily have to be the primary scoring threat. So
Yeah. All right.
yeah.
The one that got me. It was really 2 actually. And there's so many more to get to, so we could
Yeah.
hit these. We could hit these quicker. Um, it was Phoenix getting Alyssa Thomas and Satou Sabally.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah.
Like, and it was interesting to me because all right, Phoenix just punts on last year's experiment. It's like, all right, we're not doing that again. We thought we were. They were probably one of the more disappointing teams relative to their preseason expectations. Felt like last year. Got
Yeah.
wiped out of the playoffs very early, and you add 2 all-star caliber players. Sabally was hurt last year, only played 15 games.
Right.
And the year before, she was an MVP, top 5 in MVP voting. So
Sure.
I think MVP candidate is not a stretch while understanding she wasn't going to win the award. All WNBA first team too, and most improved player. So like Phoenix changes their identity.
Big time.
I'm very interested. Whenever you're an Alyssa Thomas team, granted she's only played with the Connecticut Sun, but that team has an identity. She's one of these players that, like, from an NBA standpoint, if Jimmy Butler's on your team, I should probably have said this before the last couple of months. If Jimmy Butler's on your team, you have an identity.
Yeah.
Like you have a very specific identity, a similar one to an Alyssa Thomas team. If Nikola Jokic is on your team, like there's a specific identity that comes with it. Alyssa Thomas is one of these players. Like that team, you know how they're going to play now. Just going to be, we're going to be physical.
Yeah.
We're going to be pesty. We're going to be annoying. We're going to have a top something defense. Most likely, we'll see if Diana Taurasi is definitely coming back too. That's another element of this.
That's the big question mark.
Yeah.
But also, what a strange new era. Like it's so hard for me to imagine Phoenix without Brittney Griner, especially.
Yeah.
Like and Diana too, to an extent. But Diana, like we've kind of known for a while that she's been mulling retirement, and she's still, like I said, her status with that is still up in the air. But I do wonder about. I guess they got Kalani Brown as well.
They do,
So she,
yes.
she could help at the center, position.
Kalia Copper's still
Sabally,
there also.
yeah, Kalia Copper has been one of my favorite players to watch for a long time. I mean, you saw her in the Olympics, too, and we obviously know she was a Finals MVP with Chicago, but like if Alyssa Thomas with her sort of point forward ability can help sort of unleash Kalia Copper, I think that's going to be, really exciting to watch. And then you have like Satou Sabally, who is sort of like a 3-4, like a big wing that can shoot the three. And I just think her game has developed so much. She's a real scary player, like with her skill set. So again, it's a situation much like Indiana where I really like a lot of the moves, and I'm just like really curious how it's all going to fit and how it's going to come together. And Nate Tibbetts last year wanted to shoot way more threes, which I think they were somewhat successful, but to your point, like not as effective as they could have been. And I think he's going to be at the drawing board a lot, just trying to figure out how to get the best out of this roster, like just to be able to cater to each individual player's like full potential.
Yeah. I feel like they could use another guard.
Well, I saw they signed Sammy Wickham as well. So she's kind of a 3-point.
Celeste Taylor might be back also.
Threat. Yeah. So, I think the Mercury have done a really good job. We knew Alyssa Thomas was going to be on the market for really like seriously out there.
Yeah. The Sun has to rebuild, which they're doing it, but they also signed like Tina Charles and they got Natasha Cloud. And
so I have thoughts on the Sun, but I just wanted to wrap the Mercury bit of it just by saying, like, clearly the Mercury, the last 2 off seasons have been a destination because of their new ownership, because of the investment, because of the brand spanking new practice facility. And we knew that like that had become like Alyssa Thomas was at her wit's end in Connecticut with that. And going back to the Fever as well, like we know that they have one on the horizon, and we're going to, as we go through these teams, you're going to see like the Wings, for example, also have plans for a new practice facility. So you're going to see all of that kind of coming into play. But as far as Connecticut is concerned, I've actually been pretty impressed with how they've navigated the fact that they knew pretty much they were going to lose Alyssa Thomas, that they knew they were going to lose DeWanna Bonner. Why are you looking at me like that?
I got like a minute on Connecticut right now. I mean, listen.
I'm just saying, like,
there are players on the team. There are players on the team that I actually like. I feel like they're not. If they want to bottom out, they're not bad enough. That's
given the like mass exodus and the severe disadvantage that they're at with their ownership group and the Mohegan Tribe. Like, will they finally be prompted to improve their facilities, or will the new CBA requirements eventually force them to improve conditions there, or will that just lead them to sell the team? So that's like a question down the road. But given all of that uncertainty, I mean, they still have Marina Maybury.
I have the roster right in front of me.
They acquire Natasha Cloud, who we both love. At first, I have to admit, I felt kind of bad for her. I was like, I kind of felt bad for T Cloud.
Free Natasha Cloud. I don't want to see her with the Sun. I want to see her in the playoffs.
Well, but here's the thing, though. Like, you talk about identity. If this roster stands the way it is, there's a big chip on that shoulder, if you know what I mean. And like Marina Maybury is already plays like that, and she's like, she's a gunner. And then I think Cloud is like, I think she's been underrated in terms of how she's developed in this league. And, she's also heavily defensive minded, and, they add Diamond to Shields, they get JC Sheldon, like they have some nice pieces. And then how about this, Brian? So the new head coach, Rashid Mazioun, I think is how you say it. Belgium women's basketball coach.
Really good in international play period, not just the Olympics this past year. Yeah.
Do we think that he could help them land Emma Mieseman?
Oh my God.
Because she is, and ESPN's Kevin Pelton reported that Mies, as I like to affectionately call her, won't take meetings with W teams until mid-February. So we'll find out on that. But I have to think that that she'll be courted. So I don't know, something to think about. And like, I just have a feeling they're going to be a little scrappy. I don't know record wise.
I think you're right if they do that. If they do that,
Yeah.
look, 8 teams have to make the playoffs out of 13. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
that's true. And it's going to be harder.
They're better than Golden State. They're
You
better
think?
than, I think they're better than Golden State. They're better than the Sparks. They're better than Sky.
Yeah.
They're probably better than the Wings.
I'm just saying, like, I could see them being a little sneaky. And I'm not saying like, everything
you're
they've
talking
done
me into it.
is like super impressive. I just mean, given the circumstances and just what a disadvantage they've been at. And like Tina Charles is always solid.
She can still play. Veteran leadership from her and Lindsay Allen also. Both former Liberty players. Listen, you lose Alyssa Thomas, Bree Jones, Ty Harris, Dejanay Carrington, DeWanna Bonner. But I mean, they've made a lot of moves.
They're staying afloat. I feel like they're kind of just keeping their head above water right now.
Yeah. All right. It's taking too long to get to this one. Jewell, Lloyd, Kelsey, Plum.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Like, I'm impressed you waited till 27 minutes in to swear. So
in other words, so Kelsey Plum gets traded to the Los Angeles Sparks. Jewell Lloyd, it's a 3-team deal. Jewell Lloyd goes to the Las Vegas Aces. And let me just say this first, and then I'll toss it to you. With Kelsey Plum with the Sparks, I see it, but I'm also kind of confused.
Okay.
Like, I'm wondering what that signals. Like, does Vegas think? They clearly think Jewell Lloyd is an upgrade, but do they think Kelsey Plum is in decline, or was this like a business decision where like, hey, we don't want to do an extension, so let's figure something else out? And in your opinion, because this is what I want to know, is Jewell Lloyd a better fit than Kelsey Plum with Vegas?
That remains to be seen.
She's great, by the way. This is not slander. Like, Jewell Lloyd is a top 1% scorer in the WNBA.
Yeah, but there's been some. There are question marks surrounding Jewell Lloyd, in my opinion. Just given,
I have some of them.
You do? You have them? What? You have like some of them ready to go, or
because it's like all right, now instead of Kelsey Plum, I'm surrounding A'ja Wilson and Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray.
Yeah,
with someone who needs the ball more. Maybe is that more of a reprieve? Like for A'ja Wilson, like, hey, let's have you do a little bit less so we can keep you fresher for late in the year, or is this a mistake? Because Jewell Lloyd is not going to be as efficient, so to speak. And I like her jump shot last year was very inconsistent.
Right. I haven't looked up what her overall field goal percentage.
You want it? I have it right here.
Hit me.
So Jewell Lloyd was 36% from the field last year.
Yeah,
I remember this because quite a few times, not that many, but there are a few times where I may have taken a Jewell Lloyd over that did not cash.
Fair. So
27% from 3, Maria.
There's a lot. There's a lot to unpack here because we obviously know Jewell wasn't happy last year. Like, there was an investigation, which I still don't even. I have to like go back and rehash like what exactly was going on there.
She has a great State Farm commercial though. Fantastic.
Love her State Farm commercial. Love it. No, I love when. Hold on, wait. How does it go again? Wait.
She's dribbling in the Duke's house.
She's like, so no one can steal, and then the guy goes, someone did steal, and she's just like, oh, yeah. No, that was good shit. But in all seriousness. Look, the vibes, something was wrong with the vibes in Seattle last year, right? We know that she essentially wanted out. Okay. So when you asked about the motivation, I think that's kind of what sparked the motivation for everybody, because it was like, okay, I think Jewell doesn't want to be here anymore. And so then it becomes the Storm kind of shopping around. And then this is kind of what materialized, where Vegas is like, okay, who could we potentially move? They involve a third team in LA, and then you're kind of off and running. So I think that's probably how that started. Jewell Lloyd last year, to your point, was not an efficient. She was just not efficient. The year before, the Storm were bad, but she was like the leading scorer in the league. So I don't
25
know.
a game. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's necessarily even like, I don't know that that's a good or bad thing, because if you're the best player on a bad team, of course you're going to be scoring a lot. So I think Jewell has some, I think she's going to have a chip on her shoulder too. Like, I think she's going to want to, you know, kind of revive sort of her productivity and her like perception around the league. Again, just like with all these teams, you're going to hear me repeat it, but the fit and the chemistry and the continuity, I think, is what remains to be seen. I think that, look, if you're playing with A'ja Wilson, talk about Jackie Young, talk about Chelsea Gray, like these are great players that are going to make it work. So I think it's up to Becky Hammon to make sure Jewell buys in. And I do think Becky Hammon is still a really, really good coach who's going to be able to figure that out. So I don't know that they got better or worse. As far as the
don't love their depth either, by the way.
Yeah. Well, that's fair.
They still need to do more stuff. Like, as Janelle mentions in the comments here, are they still going to add a big? I don't know, but that
Elizabeth Kitley,
a
draft pick from last year, which is
for a team that's right now, as far as odds go, second shortest odds to win the title. I mean, you know, second favorite behind the New York Liberty, who we haven't
really about hold on. They're still
seriously.
Minnesota is Minnesota still getting disrespected?
Okay, so the Liberty, this is per one prominent sportsbook who does not sponsor this program, so will not be mentioned. The New York Liberty are plus 220. The Aces are plus 280. The Lynx are plus 370. The Fever are plus 450.
So wait, did you say Minnesota was
370?
Third or fourth?
Third. It's Liberty, Aces, Lynx, Fever, and then the Mercury of 1500. Then everyone else is just very far.
I mean, I think that's
gone.
Fair, but I still think Mini isn't getting the respect.
This is a great name. Exactly says. I don't think Plum wanted to stay.
Right. So that brings me to.
You get the joke, right?
Yes.
You get the joke in it. Okay. Just making sure.
Egg. That brings me to the Sparks end of it, because this is a really juicy thing. They add Kelsey Plum. They swap the number 2 pick for the number 9 pick. And what I find most interesting about this is it kind of, to me, gives more clarity on the decision to fire Curt Miller, because we were all shocked kind of when the Sparks did let Curt Miller go, because I'm sitting here thinking, what exactly is he supposed to do? They're in rebuild mode. Like, you're trying to get a good pick in the draft. So this tells me this reinforces that they didn't really value that lottery pick as much as you would think. And like, I had to look this up, because I was like, who I couldn't remember who the Sparks GM was. They hired the GM. Her name's Reagan Pebley, early 2024. And then they bring in their new head coaches, Lynn Roberts, formerly of the University of Utah. So I don't know. I just was like, okay, I guess they don't really think that highly of whoever the number 2 pick is going to be this year. And I know there's some speculation about, you know, will Olivia Miles use her extra year of eligibility? Will Paige Beckers use her extra year of eligibility? All that. But to me, it's still a little bit, you can question it, right? You're giving up the number 2 pick. You can question that. However, I love the pairing with Kelsey Plum and Dearica Hamby. They were close before all the Dearica Hamby stuff went down with the Aces. Because I remember when Hamby got traded and KP posted to her Instagram, like, this one hurts, or like something along those lines, where they were very, you know, close friends. Apart from their personal relationship, I do think their basketball acumen. First of all, Derica Hamby has like, she's continued to grow, and she showed like what a stud she is last year. And Rickea Jackson can ball. I'm so excited. I loved watching her in Unrivaled. She's a bucket. And so I really, really like, I don't know, I think they have some really fun pieces. And I don't know, I'm kind of excited to see this new iteration of the Sparks.
I think they could be sneaky good because like Kelsey Plum, I think is a little bit more malleable than maybe the Aces just, I don't want to say treated her, but more than this deal would let on to some people. I also think there may be some contractual things where it's like they weren't going to offer the extension. They wanted to make sure that they fill that void with another all-star level guard. They found one who also wanted to get out of their situation. Like it just was a perfect storm type of thing.
Yeah.
But you also have like Cameron Brink, who we haven't mentioned, who tore her ACL last year, who actually she looked good.
She looked good, but I could be wrong. I don't expect her ready for the start of the season, but I do expect her to come back at some point during the season. Yeah. So I think that's interesting. They add Odyssey Sims as well for some depth, which I think is interesting.
And you mentioned Rickea Jackson. She averaged 14, almost 14 last year. It was actually about 13 and a half. Shot 46%. For a rookie, that's good. 46% from the field for a rookie forward, that's good.
I think she was an excellent rookie, and I think just because of her team situation and the fact that you had Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Cardoso, like I think Rickea, again, because her team wasn't that competitive, maybe wasn't always getting as much love, but I think she had a very, very solid, she was like pro ready immediately. Like she stepped on the court and was able to be a bucket, like I said. So I love watching her play, love her game. That trio, I'm really excited for.
You still have Lexi Brown, who had a down year last year from a shooting perspective and from a production perspective, but she can play. She can be a shooter for this team also. 36% for her career, 30% last year, 41%
Is she still on? She's still on Sparks?
Yeah, apparently.
I thought I read something. Maybe she went somewhere else, but
I'm trying to keep
everybody.
I'm seeing signed right here, but regardless, I don't know if she'll be that consequential with all due respect.
So
we have a couple other moves that we have to hit also.
Yeah, we still got to talk in depth about Dallas, but I think it's important to
we'll do that right now.
Sort of remind people like this is a crazy free agency. I feel like every year it's been crazier and crazier.
This is the craziest.
But like it's probably going to get even crazier next year because of the new CBA. Everybody's going to be a free agent, but I do think that's also going to be somewhat window dressing in terms of like a lot of people will most likely simply re-sign with their current team next year. It's more so just like a technicality of we don't want to lock into a contract because we know the salary cap is going to go up. Kind of like what you talk about with like Brianna Stewart. Like I think you asked me before we go on, like she's definitely re-signing, right? Like it's almost like she's done this where she's done 1-year deals, but you kind of know where she's going to be. And I think that's what we're going to see a lot of next season. But like, I think part of why this season is so crazy is because, and we talked about this when we last did a show back in December, but like all of these teams coming off this historic season where viewership skyrocketed and just like the mainstream like popularity of the league skyrocketed. Like I think there were a lot of teams that were pressured to really revisit their processes, like revamp their front offices, change head coaches, whether it was warranted or not, because I didn't always agree with those changes. But like in the wake of that, I think that's why a big reason why you're seeing so much player movement right now.
We got asked about Lexi Brown in the comments. But she signed on to play for Athletes Unlimited. So she's on the roster for the Sparks right now. But yes, we're aware of the Crohn's disease. Okay.
So Dallas.
Dejanay Carrington.
Okay.
I love Dejanay Carrington. So I immediately, when I saw that trade, I was like, man, she'll be perfect with Paige Beckers, assuming she goes number 1 overall. However, I'm not sure Enrique
However.
I'm not sure Enrique Agumbawale will. And
Well, what?
does Enrique Agumbawale fit with Paige Beckers? Assuming Paige Beckers goes number 1
I
overall.
think honestly, Paige can fit with anybody because she's just a great teammate. She's super selfless. She's a really good facilitator. I don't know. I think she can fit with anyone. I really do. I don't think it's as
this is a good question.
She has never been as
Janelle is all the smoke about Paige going back to UConn to avoid playing in Dallas legit.
I have thoughts on that.
Please do.
Why is everyone assuming that no one wants to play in Dallas? No, I'm dead serious. Like I know Satou just left, but people forget like Dallas is in the midst of turning shit around too. They're targeting relocation from Arlington to downtown Dallas. They have a new practice facility in the works, and Ben Pickman reported, quote, broader business transformations by 2026. So like, it's not like they're a franchise that's just ignoring the landscape and like not going to do anything to improve. So there's that aspect of it. Like, and not to mention, I do think there's some talent here between Enrique. You talked about DeJounte. They add Hines Allen. They add Tyesha Harris, who averaged a career high in points last season while shooting 40% from three. So there's some good things, but then as far as Paige specifically, with her mindset, I don't think she's a draft dodger. I don't think she's someone who's going to run from the draft simply because she's
Did you say draft dodger?
Yeah.
It took me a second. I was
is that like, I don't know if that's an insensitive term given the fact that we're talking about professional basketball and not,
I mean, in 2025, anything is possible. But I just wanted to also mention, like, as far as the Dallas Wings, this is important. Not the same ownership group who's running the Dallas Mavericks, okay? Because sometimes that does get folded in together with NBA and the sister club in WNBA. Not the case here. Also, Kurt Miller's
doing work.
He's the GM and the EVP.
He is doing work.
And this is I mean, look, I would just tell you, I kind of like this roster once you add Paige Beckers into it. I just wonder the fit between her and Enrique and DeJounte, I think could potentially be really good. Yeah. Kind of small, but really good regardless. And you mentioned Ty Harris, who I think is a sneaky good ad here.
Yeah.
And Alyssa Smith, who we talked about a little bit at the top of this. I think she could rebuild her value as a player here. Like she had a down year last year for whatever reason. Like when a team has a shift, just transformationally, and you bring in someone like Caitlin Clark, like there are going to be some players who have a tough time adjusting to what that was. And clearly they were a more perimeter-based team last year. It didn't really affect Aaliyah Boston in a super negative way. It affected Alyssa Smith a little bit more, who got played out of her role a little bit. I think here, this could potentially make more sense. You have multiple playmakers as well. I mean, on the perimeter, they're going to be a lot of fun to watch. And also, Janelle is carrying the comment section right now. The rest of you got to step it up. Let's see. So the way Satou bombed the organization.
Of course. No, I totally get that. But Satou was she had been there for a few years and she had been dealing with things.
Thank you, Rob, for the super chat. Very much appreciated. Super chats get read. Super chat, I stopped the show. And we put it on the board.
Thank you, Rob.
Yes, so
but I just want to respond to this. I think it's totally fair. Look, Satou wanted to leave for a reason.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is the way things have been in the past, it doesn't necessarily mean that's how they're going to be moving forward, because Dallas clearly recognizes they had, regardless of being a bad team last year, they had a very good business year last year. Like they, ticket sales, season tickets, all that stuff has gone up. Like I said, they have the plans to revamp the business. They have the plans to kind of ante up as far as the practice facility is concerned. So if I were Paige Beckers, I would be going in with the mindset of, hey, we can make this into something. Like I'm not going in there like, oh my God, it's not LA, boo-hoo. Like I just I don't see that Paige having that personality. Now, if she decides to stay, I think there's going to be other motivations, whether it's, I actually don't even think this applies to her. Like, people talk about, well, if she stays, NIL money, blah, blah, blah. I don't think she gives a shit about that anymore. Like, I just think Paige is, her maturity and her her maturity as a person and as a player is going to dictate, I think, that she is ready to be a pro. I think it was a controversial decision last year. Not a controversial one, but like a decision that weighed on her heavily as far as whether to stay or to go.
Mm-hmm.
And it was made a little bit easier by the fact that she had a season-ending injury the year before, lost a year. Even the year that UConn made it to the Final Four, she was injured most of the year. She'd barely gotten to play with AZ Fudd, who she like helped recruit to UConn. So like there were definitely, I think, legitimate reasons why she came back this year.
Unfinished business.
If you, 100% unfinished business. Now, if UConn, wins a championship this year or even makes it to the Final Four again, I think that's going to be enough for her to feel fulfilled and move on. But I don't know. I think the idea that like Paige doesn't want to play for Dallas, I think that's a little I think it's been an overblown assumption.
Yeah.
And I totally get why Satou wanted to leave, but I have the sense that Dallas is trying to level up as far as what they provide their players.
Yeah, and listen, Dallas, and you know this, especially if you're just working in this industry. So Maria knows this. I don't know if everybody else knows this, but in media, like Dallas is a major. That Dallas-Fort Worth area is a major market. It's considered a big market. So the same would apply to a sports team in that regard. This is one of the biggest markets technically in the WNBA, even though it hasn't felt like it because, last season, things of that nature. But no, this is a big market that like Paige Beckers is enough of a star who could be potentially a generational in terms of talent. Where like, listen, if she's playing really well, Dak Prescott might be there courtside. Oh yeah, that's right. He got traded. Anthony, I did that.
Yeah.
Anthony Davis. I don't know how sitting here, but like this is what we're talking about here, right? When as it pertains to this area, and with Paige Beckers, I also think now is kind of the time. Like I'd be very surprised if she doesn't come out and enter the draft this year. Also considering that she is 23 going on 24.
Yeah, I just think
that's the other piece of this.
Right. I think her age and maturity, like I really hesitate to think that she wouldn't come out. But also like, who's to say that Paige can't do what Caitlin did to an extent in terms of.
No, I agree.
Like Caitlin Clark. Yeah. Everyone knew she was excited to be at Indiana because she's a Midwest girl and like all this stuff. But like, Indiana wasn't good for a long, long time. And they only just announced a new practice facility coming this offseason. So it's not like, so if that didn't, we already knew Caitlin had made up her mind that she was going to declare anyway, because she wasn't scared. She wasn't scared. She was like, wherever I go, we're going to be and I don't see why Paige wouldn't have that same mindset of wherever I go, like, I'm going to give my all. And like, just knowing the character, like I've covered UConn a long time, like the type of players that Gino recruits, and Paige is certainly like in that camp. Just because Paige makes a lot of NIL money doesn't mean that that's her primary like focus. It's not at all. Her primary focus is winning. It's being a good teammate. It's trying to get a championship. And I think that same sort of mindset she's going to take that with her to wherever she gets drafted.
All right, let's get to Element Gold, and then we'll wrap on free agency. One more thing, and we have to do contenders still. And we're 50 minutes in, so we'll try to speed through this. All right, Element Gold. I have plenty to say. Just don't want to be rude. Paige is going to mess around and find herself in Toronto. Would it be a bad fit? She could be the first franchise point leader, etc. Listen, Toronto is also a big market. It's just not in America, but who cares? I mean, some people might.
I just don't. I've covered.
I'm glad you stopped me from making a political joke there.
No,
Why was this close?
Like, I just don't see.
Save me for myself.
from knowing Paige and the interactions I've had with her, I just don't see her as the type of person that's like, I don't want to go to Dallas. I'm going to wait. Like,
Or
I just
Toronto for
don't.
that matter. Yeah.
And even if, and mark my words, even if she does for some reason decide to stay in college, to me, it's not because of Dallas. It's because of her own personal things. That's just my perception of her personality.
All right. We have to hit.
Yeah.
Brittney Griner is in Atlanta?
Atlanta.
And so is Bree Jones. But like
Yeah.
Brittney Griner is not going to be with Phoenix?
Yeah, that like I
Like,
said before, that is strange.
let's just outline this. Brittney Griner signs a 1-year deal. Bree Jones also signs a 1-year deal because everybody in the W is seemingly
Right.
signing
Like I said.
1-year deals, like you said, because I mean there is a CBA that has to get done
Yeah.
at some point this year because the deadline is actually going to be, I think, immediately after the upcoming finals in October. So Brittney Griner, who has been with the Phoenix Mercury since she entered the league 2013, this is somebody who is a 9-time All-Star who's going to be with the Atlanta Dream. I don't know what level of competitiveness we're to expect from the Atlanta Dream, but Brittney Griner was still a high-level player last year. Why is that happening again? I didn't even make a thumbs up.
Is that somebody liking our?
No. It's just there's a way to turn it off. I just haven't gotten around to it.
It's okay. It's okay.
But just Brittney Griner. Like, okay, what does that do for Atlanta? I feel like the team isn't super complete yet. And look, free agency, like there's still a lot left to be done. There's still good players out on the market. There's still trades that are going to be made, and training camps are not going to be open for a couple of months here.
Well,
but like, what I don't know. What do we do with this?
So Atlanta obviously needed, I think they needed an answer. Like, as much as I love Tina Charles and I was praising her before, and I think she's great, I think they, part of why she ends up landing in Connecticut is I think maybe Atlanta saw BG as like an upgrade there. BG is still a phenomenal, she's a phenomenal player. And what I guess my only question about BG and Bree Jones together is that they are not bigs that can shoot the three. So they're not like stretch bigs. So I do wonder about that a little bit, but you still have, they're so like, to me, Griner is so dominant on the inside. And this is why that's always worked for Phoenix, that if you have shooters on the outside, like Ryan Howard, whoever, it's going to open things up for them, because I still think there's a dominance there, especially with Brittney Griner. And, this is another interesting team, another new head coach, Carl Smesko, the former FGCU head coach. Really curious to see how that comes together, because I think that Atlanta overall sort of played below their talent level last year.
I agree with that.
So I think they did end up sneaking into the playoffs, and they were definitely playing better and more competitive late in the season. But yeah, I have a curiosity at what this team could be.
Exactly. Back in the comments says, has anyone done an Eli Manning and refused to go where drafted? In the WNBA, I'm not sure about that, but Element notes John Elway, Bo Jackson. In basketball, oh man, there's an example somewhere, but it's not coming to me right now. I wouldn't say there's a recent prominent example that I could think of right now. There's been always rumors about could a player do this or whatever. Paige is not one of those.
Well, I think what it comes down to, what the word that I'm looking for, Brian, is that Paige is not a diva. That's all.
Yeah,
that's really sums up what I'm trying to say. But continue.
Yeah. With Atlanta, I like the fact that, okay, Jordan Canada is going to be back also. I really like her as a floor general.
Yeah.
You mentioned Ryan Howard, and she'll give you scoring from that wing spot. Like they have a functional starting five once you sort of build it out. We mentioned Bree Jones, we mentioned Brittney Griner, still have some other pieces, but like when you go through it, we're talking about the Atlanta Dream. They're a team that may make the playoffs or may not, but they're they have talent on this roster, which really indicates like how much talent there is in the league. There are some teams that we're not going to get to because frankly, they ain't doing shit. But
Yeah.
like, there are teams that if you're looking at odds too, the Dream are 7th to win the championship, which tells you, all right, we think they can make the playoffs. They just probably won't win a round.
Right.
I think that's sort of where I'm at with them. Okay, let's get to the contenders.
Yes.
Which we've taken too long to do. Okay.
Yeah.
The top contenders.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. And I think your analysis especially has been great. Okay.
Well, thanks.
2025 WNBA championship contenders. To me, the list ends at 5. There's 5 true contenders to me this year. As I mentioned earlier, to some extent. You have the Liberty, you have the Aces, you have the Lynx, you have the Fever, and you have the Mercury. Those are the only teams right now that I'm like, okay, I could see them winning a championship. The Mercury, I still think, like, all right, does Diana Taurasi come back? Are they going to do something else? Everyone else is just not quite there yet. Yeah. And we don't know what other dominoes are going to fall for someone else to be a sneaky contender. Because frankly, the Lynx were a surprise for a lot of people last year to get to the finals and nearly win the championship.
Right.
And there were people saying, hey, are they even going to make the playoffs this year? And they surprised a lot of people. I don't know if there's a Lynx yet. We'll have to see closer to training camp. But I mean, do you disagree with my list of contenders?
No, I have no issues with your list of contenders. To me, the Lynx, Liberty, and Aces are still slightly above the other two, only because, as I keep mentioning, the question marks, the continuity, the chemistry, and it took the Liberty a couple of tries with their core. Minnesota, interestingly, they re-signed Natisha Heidemann, which I think is important to them. She was their leading bench scorer, but they bring back nearly 90% of their total minutes from last year. And I think that's important. I think they had a great free agency last year.
Yeah.
They're sticking together. They're year 2. By the way, I think they're the most motivated. I think they're pissed about how the finals ended still.
1,000%.
I think Napisa Collier is a beast. I think she is she's absolutely crushing it. So I think the Lynx are really scary. Liberty, interestingly, we didn't talk about, so Courtney Vandersloot goes to the Sky, but the Liberty should be getting Maureen Johannes back. So I think that helps them with that depth in the guard spot. I think it's huge that they lose Kayla Thornton. I really think
she went in the expansion draft for people.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be really hard to replace her defense, her understanding of the system. I mean, I said this when I covered the W finals. They don't win that championship without her, in my opinion, just because of what she gave them, especially in that game 5 specifically. So I think that hurts them a little bit, but I still think they're going to be fine.
Let me ask you about this real quick, actually. Do you think Phoebus takes a step up, and what does that look like this year? After, I think second in Rookie of the Year voting last year for the league.
Phoebus was an absolute. She was a game changer last year.
She was a lot better than I thought she was going to be.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, if you recall, so beginning of actually pretty much the whole season, she was coming off the bench. It wasn't until Sandy Brondello made what Cheryl Reeve referred to as one of the best playoff personnel moves ever, which was inserting her into the starting lineup instead of Sloot. And Phoebus is, I will rave about Phoebus forever. She is big. She can guard every position. She can shoot the 3.
43% last year.
Just love her. So yeah, I do think she's going to be even more. I hope she takes on a bigger role. I really do.
But that's kind of where I'm going. It's like, all right, if we're going to fill the Kayla Thornton void of minutes, so to speak. And I do wonder, okay, so we thought, is Benijah Laney Hamilton going to be on the roster? Well, right now she is on the roster for this season. That was sort of a question.
And by the way, and I think B is still a very important piece too. I mean, let's not
perimeter defense. They need her for perimeter defense.
She wasn't fully healthy late last year, and so maybe her defense wasn't 100% where it would normally be. She won them a finals game. Like that, what was it? It was game 2, I think. She won them game 2. She was like their leading scorer in game 2. So to me, hopefully B is back and better than ever. And yeah, I mean, I guess
wonder,
that really kind of sums up the contenders for me.
if you're a championship team or even just a contender, like you're generally relying on other players to step up in the next year, like younger players. So a Jalen Sherrod, for example, or a Naira Sabally. And it's like, are these players going to step into those roles if they're not able to get somebody else from the outside?
Well, speaking of, I said that the Liberty wouldn't have won without Kayla Thornton. They wouldn't have won without Niara Sabally either. Yeah. So I think if Niara, because Niara, like, she didn't have a super consistent role throughout most of the season. If she, like, does what she did in the finals and is that consistently throughout next year, that's going to be a huge improvement for them, in my opinion. So there's that. I know we're probably going to hop here momentarily. So I just wanted to comment that, yeah, I'm going to hop. I just wanted to comment that, one, I haven't heard a thing about the Mystics. Like, we talked about Shatori Walker-Kimbrough went to Atlanta. I haven't heard jack shit about the Mystics. And I think this is an interesting, like, I wonder if it's been a disadvantage of them sort of firing their front office staff when they did. And remember, they didn't hire their new coach and GM until after the expansion draft. So I wonder about that. But quick offshoot, we haven't heard anything about Elena Delle Donne.
I was literally about to ask, is she going to play?
Come out of the woodwork at some point and show up? And then also, where is Kennedy Carter going to land? Not related to Mystics, but just related to, like, people that are, impactful players that are still out there. I haven't heard anything about Kennedy either. So
Elena Delle Donne is interesting. Like, is she willing to step into like a veteran role? Not veteran minimum or be like
really
a end of the bench type of thing.
On...
But like, is she like, could the Liberty get her, or could a contender get her and just be like, hey, we don't need you to have a 30% usage. We don't need you to do what you were doing in the Mystics all these years, but we need you to help us with a championship, essentially. Kind of like what Candace Parker was brought back to the Sky to do and brought to Las Vegas to do, pre-injury, of course. So I wonder if that's going to be a role for her that she's interested in, what that would sort of look like, and where would that even be? Because I think there's a role for her on any of the contenders. I also think there's a role for her on, we mentioned the Atlanta Dream. Like, if she, for whatever reason, wanted to go there, I'm just kind of spitballing here. The Wings would be a lot of fun with her on the roster as well.
I just don't know. I don't know what she's thinking. Like, it's really hard to get into her headspace, and she's been kind of laying low. So it's like, I don't know.
Kennedy Carter also
back in the mix. And then we haven't talked about the Sky much, because I think now their expectations aren't high. But I think, I wonder, I think, Camilla and Angel will continue to develop, and there will be some good things there.
They got Kia Nurse.
But Kennedy Carter, I don't know. Like, it's been, the Sky got Rebecca Allen, which I love Rebecca Allen.
That's right. And Courtney Vandersloot, as you mentioned.
Right, Vandersloot back. So
I mean, you would think they would take a step. I do wonder what year 2 Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso looks like.
I do think that Vandersloot with those bigs is going to be, because she can still, pick and roll all day. Like, I think, and she's a floor general too. So I think it could be really good for their development as bigs to have a point guard like Sluty.
I still want someone to trade for Natasha Cloud. Okay. I
think that pretty much rounds out all of the.
Yeah. Before we hop. We have our list of contenders. I would agree with you that I would put the Liberty and the Aces
and the Lynx maybe a step ahead just because of
just
the
a step ahead of the Fever,
just because we don't know about the fit yet. That's all.
But a lot of butts. But Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell,
Fever are exciting.
Natasha Howard.
Yeah.
You mentioned Lexi Hall, Sophie Cunningham, Aaliyah Boston. New coach.
Yeah, no, they're gonna be interesting. This is gonna be but they're also gonna have, I think, much higher expectations.
I'm gonna ask.
This is not gonna be like.
I'm gonna ask you the question.
What?
Can Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever win the WNBA title in 2025? Can they do it? I gotta add a D at the end of "and." I messed that up.
Yeah. I mean, of course they can do it. I'm just not ready to say they will do it.
If you have 100 percentage points, what hold on. Hold on. I'm gonna ask it a different way. Hold on. If you have
put me on the spot.
This happens an hour in. If you have 100 percentage points, how much percentage points are you giving for the Liberty to win the title, for the Aces, for the Lynx, for the Fever, for the Mercury?
Yeah, but Bryan, like this is what just
I'm gonna get an answer.
Go to the sports book and do the math with the odds, and you'll get that answer. I'm not really like a math person.
I'm asking Maria Marino. Not Kings.
I guess my favorite. I know you said the currently the favorite to win is New York, right? Then yes. Vegas, then Mini.
New York 220. I'll do it again. New York 220. Aces 280. Lynx 370. I think you want to flip that.
I kind of want to flip that. I like the Lynx
Fever 450
personally better than the Aces, and maybe even better than the Libs. Maybe even better than the Libs, just because of. Look, again, they took them to 5 games. They
mentioned Courtney Williams, who busted their ass in the playoffs also.
Largely the same rosters on both. Mm-hmm. I'm skeptical. Again, it's the skepticism is not because of doubt about any player or situation. It's more just the uncertainty of like, I just don't know yet how this is going to come into play. And like, I'm done with betting. I'm not betting championship futures until like at least the midway point of the season, because there are better ways to find value with like betting. And so from a prediction standpoint, don't get me wrong. Like I love the Fever. I watched most games, but I watched like every Fever game last year. I'm pumped to see what they look like, how they come together. They could have the right mix of stars, young stars, star vets, great coach. Now they're going to, regardless of what happens, remember the first round is going to have a home and home. So nobody that's making the first round isn't going to get a home game. So like, I think the Fever are definitely poised to like make some noise. I'm just not 100% ready to be like, all right, they're going to be, top 3 championship contender just yet.
Element Gold. We both have worked in gambling. We know that.
What did he say?
No, just saying that betting odds are not favorites. In this case, they are, because I mean, I don't know how many future bets that they're getting on this championship, but the Liberty are the favorites to repeat.
Yeah,
they are
that's what I mean.
Today. Yeah. The Fever plus 450, which I mean, that's going to get extra just because of Caitlin Clark. I think to me, it comes down to this. If I may do a cross-racial comparison, but like I was saying this about Victor Wembanyama before the season started. Like if he is actually that good, how good can the Spurs sort of be? And the NBA is different because it's 30 teams versus 13 or whatever the case may be. But I have the same question about Caitlin Clark. Like if she is this good, and there's going to be more context this year because this is going to be Caitlin Clark, who is not going to be playing in the Olympics, who is not going to be coming off a college basketball season and going right into the WNBA season.
She's going to be rested. She is in the lab. She is working on that
She's not showing up to All-Star Weekend.
She's dialed. No, I think she's going to be laser focused on, and she's not going to have the same challenges in terms of like the strength of schedule was insane last year. Like she was like, to your point, like getting drafted a week after being at the Final Four. Like I think we're going to see.
It's scary.
All the stars are aligning for Caitlin to continue ascending her level.
And it's not just about her, because it's like you have an anchor. You have Aaliyah Boston and you have Natasha Howard, who are going to defend.
Yeah, as long as the vets buy into what Stephanie White is doing, they buy into the way that Kelsey Mitchell did with Caitlin last year, as long as Natasha Howard and DeWanna Bonner and Sophie Cunningham are all kind of on the same page, I do think it's a dangerous team.
If you're the Liberty, if you're the Liberty, you should trade for Natasha Cloud. I don't care. But if you're the Liberty and you get the Fever in round 2 of the playoffs,
it's tough.
Like you're worried. Like you're worried also because they
had a tough second round with Vegas.
You could lock it. You're gonna have to guard Caitlin Clark differently this year, because other than Kelsey Mitchell, you also have DeWanna Bonner, who can create with the ball. Like Natasha Howard could fill it up too if necessary.
Yeah, and also Caitlin, I think, has gotten way better at handling double teams, handling blitzes.
And I still need to know what's going on with the aces. I agree with you. To me, I don't like the aces more than I like the Lynx right now.
That's how I feel.
The Jewell Lloyd piece, I need to see. Now, let's give credit, because A'ja Wilson is that good, and that could open up like Jewell Lloyd's open threes, for example. Like the way she'll be able to feed off Chelsea Gray, who's an amazing passer, an amazing floor general, like top 1% of 1% of real point guards on the planet. And the Jackie Young piece, like we know what she can do offensively. I don't love their depth. I like the Lynx depth more, actually. Bringing back Courtney Williams, who really stepped up in the playoffs last year, is not a small thing. Like I do have more questions about the aces, to the point where I'm looking at like, all right, if we get Fever aces at any point in the playoffs, like what does that look like? Like, I'm not picking the Fever to win a championship this year, but it wouldn't surprise me if they got to the finals.
Listen, it's only February, Brian. Okay, like we're just, you and I at this point, we're reacting.
I'm hosting a show.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, we got time. We got time to, you're like, what percentage could, of chance do you give this person to win, this team to win a championship? Like,
y'all should see the conversations we have in real life. Y'all should see the conversations we have in real life about this. If you thought this was fascinating.
Okay, meanwhile, we're pushing an hour and 15. So I think
we got to wrap. Thank y'all for watching. If you do watch this later, we appreciate you. All 75 minutes. As always, you can comment later, you can donate later, and on this channel, NBA trade deadline stream tomorrow night, 10:30, and Friday night we'll be recapping the trade deadline. And then hopefully I can hibernate for a while.
Crazy.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.